Hello, my friend. I'm glad you are here. Tonight, we will journey through the life of a man whose discovery changed the course of medicine forever. Alexander Fleming. His story is one of curiosity, patience, and a moment of serenity that saved millions of lives. We will travel back to the rolling hills of Scotland, where a curious boy once roamed. Step into the quiet of his laboratory, where an accident became a miracle, and drift through time as his discovery reshaped the future of healing. But before we begin, I invite you to support this channel by liking this video and subscribing. Your support allows me to continue sharing these peaceful journeys into the minds of history's greatest geniuses. Now, take a deep breath in and exhale slowly. Let your body relax. Let your thoughts settle, and allow yourself to drift into the story. The year was 1881. A gentle breeze whispered through the rolling hills of Ayrshire, Scotland. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden light over the quiet farmland. In a small stone-built home, nestled among fields of green, a child was born. A child who would one day change the world. His name was Alexander Fleming, and from the moment he opened his eyes, the world around him seemed full of wonder. He was the seventh of 8 children, growing up in a house filled with the gentle hum of conversation, the warmth of family, and the scent of fresh earth carried in from the field. His father, Hugh Fleming, was a farmer, his hands rough from years of tending the land, his voice steady with wisdom passed down through generations. His mother, Grace, was a woman of great kindness, her presence like a soft lullaby that soothed the household. Life in the Scottish countryside moved slowly, measured by the rhythm of the seasons. The mornings were crisp, the afternoons filled with the distant sounds of sheep calling to one another across the hills. Young Alexander, or Alec, as his family called him, would often wander the fields, his small boots pressing into the damp soil, his curious eyes scanning the world around. He wasn't like other children. While they ran and played without a care, Alec was always watching, always wondering. His father passed away when Alec was just 7 years old, leaving his mother to raise him and his siblings alone. Yet even in sorrow, life continued. The house was still filled with warmth, with stories told by candlelight, with the soft hush of his mother's voice as she read to him before bed. He listened closely. Every word, every lesson, every piece of knowledge became a part of him. At night, as the cool Scottish air wrapped around their home, young Alec would lie awake, staring at the wooden beams above him, lost in thought. What made the sky so endless? Why did the rain always return? How did the world work in ways so precise, so mysterious? The days passed like pages in a book, and though he did not yet know it, each moment of curiosity, each question left unanswered, was leading him toward a destiny far greater than he could ever imagine. Grace Sterling Morton, Alexander Fleming's mother, was a woman of quiet strength and deep devotion. She had soft, kind eyes that carried both warmth and wisdom, and though life had not always been easy, she met each challenge with unwavering grace. She had been much younger than Alec's father, Hugh, but their marriage had been one of respect and partnership. When Hugh passed away in 1888, leaving her a widow with young children to care for, she did not falter. She remained the steady heart of their home, ensuring that love and learning filled every corner of their modest farmhouse. She believed in hard work, in faith, and in the power of knowledge. Though their family was not wealthy, she was determined that her children, including young Alec, would have every opportunity to rise beyond the boundaries of farm life. She taught them the value of discipline, not with stern words, but with gentle guidance. She had a way of making even the simplest moments feel important. The way she carefully prepared meals, ensuring each child had enough to eat, or how she would sit by the fire at night, mending clothes while humming an old Scottish tune. These were the small, unnoticed acts of love that shaped Alexander's early years. But beyond being a mother, Grace was also a woman of intelligence. She had a sharp mind, and though she had never pursued higher education herself, she understood the importance of learning. She encouraged her children to read, to think, to question. She saw the light of curiosity in Alex's eyes and nurtured it, never dismissing his endless questions about the world. When teachers at his early school in Loudon Moor and later in Darvel spoke of his promise, she listened. She knew he was meant for more than life on the farm, and she would do whatever it took to see him succeed. Even after he left home to pursue his studies, her influence never faded. The values she instilled in him, the humility, the perseverance, the kindness, would stay with him for the rest of his life. And though history remembers Alexander Fleming as a great scientist, perhaps it was his mother, in those quiet years of his childhood, who first shaped him into the man he would become. Alexander Fleming's childhood was shaped by the rolling green hills of Ayrshire, Scotland, where he was born on August 6, 1881. The air was always crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and fresh grass. He grew up in a modest farmhouse in Lochfield, surrounded by the quiet rhythms of rural life. Early mornings, the soft clatter of hooves on the dirt paths, the distant calls of farmers tending their field. He was the youngest of 4 children, born to Hugh Fleming and Grace Sterling Morton. But he also had 4 older half-siblings from his father's first marriage. The household was always full of movement, of laughter, of the daily toil that farm life demanded. But despite the work, there was warmth. There was a sense of unity, of shared purpose. As a small boy, Alec, bright-eyed and endlessly curious, would run through the fields, his fingers grazing the tops of wildflowers, his mind already filled with wonder about the world around him. He was not the loudest among his siblings, but he observed everything. He watched the way the animals behaved, the way plants grew, the way the seasons shifted with time. His mother often caught him staring at raindrops trailing down the window, lost in thought. At night, by the glow of the fire, his mother would tell him stories, sometimes about their Scottish heritage, sometimes about great men who had changed the world. These moments shaped him, planting the first seeds of ambition in his young mind. School was a natural fit for him. He attended the Loudon Moor School, a small village school where lessons were simple but meaningful. His teachers noticed his sharp mind, his ability to grasp new ideas quickly. Unlike some children who struggled to sit still, Alec listened with quiet intensity, absorbing every lesson. When he was 7, he moved on to Darvel School, a larger institution that broadened his world. There, he excelled, though he was never boastful about his intelligence. His mother, ever watchful, saw something special in him. She knew that the farm, as much as it had given their family stability, was not where her youngest son belonged. His older brother Tom had already left home to become a doctor in London, and perhaps in her heart, Grace knew that Alec, too, was destined for something beyond the Scottish countryside. The path ahead was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. Alexander Fleming was meant for more. As Alexander grew older, his world began to expand beyond the rolling hills of Ayrshire. His mother, Grace, had always believed in him, and she encouraged him to pursue education beyond the farm life he was born into. At 10 years old, he earned a scholarship to Kilmarnock Academy, where he was exposed to more advanced study. The transition from his small village school to the larger, more structured environment of the academy was an adjustment, but Alexander adapted quickly. He was not one to seek attention. His nature was quiet, observant, but his sharp mind set him apart. His older brother, Tom Fleming, had already established himself as a doctor in London, And this would prove to be a turning point in young Alexander's life. When he was 13, his father's absence was deeply felt. Hugh Fleming had passed away when Alexander was only 7, leaving Grace to raise her children alone. He did so with resilience, ensuring that her son had every opportunity to succeed. By 14, Alexander moved to London to join his older brother. The bustling city was a world away from the quiet countryside of Lochfield. The hum of carriage wheels on cobbled streets, the scent of rain on stone, the hurried pace of people moving through their daily lives. It was overwhelming at first, but thrilling. He attended the Regent Street Polytechnic School, where his natural intelligence continued to shine. However, financial constraints meant that further education was uncertain. At 16, he took a job as a clerk at a shipping office, an ordinary, stable job, but far from his true calling. Fate, however, had different plans. When Tom Fleming saw the potential in his younger brother, he encouraged Alexander to follow a medical path. Tom had made a name for himself as a successful ophthalmologist, and he urged his brother to apply for medical school. Then came a stroke of luck. In 1901, at 20 years old, Alexander won a scholarship to St. Mary's Hospital Medical School in Paddington, London. It was there that his path truly took shape. The quiet boy from Scotland was about to embark on a journey that would change the course of medicine forever. As Alexander entered St. Mary's Hospital Medical School, at the age of 20, a new chapter in his life unfolded. The transition was marked with excitement and challenge. The bustling halls of the hospital, the scent of antiseptic in the air, and the hum of medical discussions around him. It was all so different from the tranquil countryside of his youth. But Alexander felt a spark deep within him. He knew he was on the right path. The idea of healing, of discovering new ways to fight illness, filled him with purpose. His time at St. Mary's was transformative. His studies focused on medicine, but Alexander's curiosity led him to the cutting-edge field of bacteriology, the study of bacteria and microorganisms. This area of medicine fascinated him, drawing him in like a magnetic force. He was captivated by the idea that invisible organisms could wreak havoc on the human body, and that perhaps there was a way to outsmart these tiny enemies. He spent hours in laboratories, meticulously examining slides under the microscope, eager to uncover the mysteries that lay hidden in the smallest of cells. There was something meditative in these moments. The soft glow of the laboratory lamps, the quiet hum of equipment, and the flickering of thoughts in his mind as he searched for answers. It was as if time slowed down whenever he peered into his microscope. During his time at St. Mary's, Alexander befriended several brilliant doctors and scientists who became both mentors and colleagues. But what stood out was his commitment to making a difference. He wasn't just studying to become a doctor. He was studying to solve a greater mystery. His curiosity became an obsession, and he often found himself staying in the lab late into the night, fueled by his desire to discover something groundbreaking. In 1903, after completing his studies, Alexander became a research assistant at St. Mary's Hospital, where he began his deep dive into bacteriology. It was here, under the mentorship of Sir Almroth Wright, that Alexander would start his groundbreaking work in antibiotics. Little did he know, his journey would eventually lead to the discovery of one of the most significant medical breakthroughs in history, penicillin. But before that momentous discovery, he spent countless hours researching bacterial infections, particularly in the realm of sepsis. He worked diligently to understand how bacteria could invade the body, causing illness and death. His work wasn't easy. The lab was filled with the smell of chemicals, the sound of glass beakers clinking together, and the buzz of his thoughts racing as he sought to uncover the mysteries of disease. It was during this time that Alexander became deeply aware of the limitations of the medical tools available. The world was in desperate need of a cure for bacterial infections, an answer to the relentless spread of diseases like pneumonia and tuberculosis. His heart burned with the hope that he could be the one to find it. The turning point came in 1928, when he made the accidental discovery that would change everything. As Alexander dedicated himself to his research, his personal life also flourished. In 1915, at the age of 34, he married Sarah Marion McElroy, an Irish nurse. Sarah, known as Serene to those close to her, was a strong and compassionate woman who understood Alexander's deep commitment to his work. Their relationship was built on mutual respect and admiration. She provided him with unwavering support, standing beside him as he immersed himself in the world of bacteriology. Their home was a place of quiet refuge, a contrast to the buzzing laboratories where Alexander spent most of his time. Despite his intense dedication to science, he always made time for his family. In 1924, they welcomed their only son, Robert Fleming, who would later follow in his father's footsteps, pursuing a career in medicine. Alexander's days were spent balancing the demands of family life with his insatiable thirst for discovery. He was known to be a man of few words, yet his mind was always active, constantly piecing together clues from his research. His colleagues admired his patience and persistence, qualities that would soon lead him to one of the most important medical breakthroughs in history: the accidental discovery of penicillin. It was the year 1928, and Alexander was working in his laboratory at St. Mary's Hospital in London, just as he had done for years. His research focused on Staphylococcus bacteria, a common cause of infections. He carefully arranged petri dishes, observing the colonies of bacteria growing inside them. One late summer day, as he examined a set of dishes he had left unattended, he noticed something unusual. A blue-green mold had started growing in one of the petri dishes, and around this mold, the bacteria had completely disappeared. It was as if the mold had killed them. Intrigued, Alexander leaned in closer, his sharp eyes narrowing as he studied the strange occurrence. The air in the lab was still, the moment heavy with the weight of discovery. Something inside him stirred. This was no ordinary accident. He identified the mold as Penicillium notatum, and realized that it was releasing a substance capable of killing harmful bacteria. The realization sent a thrill through him. Could this be the key to fighting infections? Could this substance save lives? He named the substance penicillin, and from that moment, his research took a new direction. He tested penicillin against different bacteria and found that it was incredibly effective, especially against deadly infections like pneumonia, scarlet fever, and syphilis. Yet, despite the incredible potential of penicillin, Alexander faced difficulties in producing it on a large scale. The substance was unstable, breaking down too quickly to be widely used. For years, his discovery remained largely unnoticed, hidden in the pages of medical journals. The rise of penicillin and its global impact. It wasn't until the 1940s, during World War II, that a team of scientists, Howard Florey, Ernst Chain, and Norman Heatley, picked up Alexander's work and found a way to mass-produce penicillin. By 1942, the antibiotic was being used to treat wounded soldiers, and soon after, it became a global phenomenon, changing medicine forever. For his contributions, Alexander Fleming was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1945, alongside Florey and Chain. He humbly accepted the honor, never seeking fame, but always driven by his passion for saving lives. Alexander Fleming lived to see the enormous impact of his discovery, and though he remained modest, The world recognized him as the man who changed modern medicine. His work laid the foundation for the antibiotics that continue to save millions of lives today. The years passed gently, like waves lapping at the shore. Time moving forward, steady and sure. Alexander Fleming, once a curious boy wandering the Scottish fields, had grown into a man of great discovery. A man whose work would touch the lives of millions. But beyond the laboratories, beyond the glass plates and cultures of bacteria, there was another part of his story. A quieter, more intimate world. The world of family. In the soft glow of the late 1920s, Alexander found companionship in Sarah Marion McElroy, a warm and intelligent woman whose presence brought a quiet balance to his life. She was thoughtful, supportive, a steady force beside a man whose mind often wandered into the vast mysteries of medicine and science. In 1924, they welcomed their son, Robert, into the world. A new life, a new beginning. The Fleming household was filled with quiet intellect, a place where the air carried the scent of old books, parchment, and the lingering traces of antiseptic. Science was ever present, not just in Alexander's work, but in the rhythm of their daily life. Yet, he was not an absent father. Though his heart belonged to discovery, his hands, steady and precise in the lab, were gentle at home. He did not push his son toward a particular path, but instead encouraged him to think, to wonder, to explore the world as he had once done in his boyhood. Robert grew, absorbing the quiet brilliance of his father, walking in the shadow of a man who had forever changed medicine. And when the time came, he too chose the path of healing, not as a researcher, but as a doctor, a quiet guardian of life, tending to the sick, offering care in a way his father's discoveries had allowed. It was not fame he sought, not accolades, but the simple act of helping those in need, just as Alexander had always hoped. And so, even as time moved forward, as days turned into years, Alexander's legacy was not only written in textbooks, not only sealed in petri dishes and scientific journals. It lived on in his family, in the son who carried forward the quiet duty of healing, in the countless lives touched by his work. The world knew Alexander Fleming as a man of science, a discoverer, a genius whose hands shaped the future of medicine. But beyond the cold sterility of laboratories, beyond the quiet hum of research and the scent of antiseptics, he was a husband, a father, a man who carried love in his heart as much as knowledge in his mind. In the year 1924, as the Scottish winds whispered through the fields of his childhood home, a new chapter of his life began. His wife, Sarah Marion McElroy, was not a scientist, not a woman of laboratories and petri dishes, but she was his partner in life, a presence that anchored him when his mind wandered too far into discovery. Their home was a place of quiet warmth, a balance between the world of science and the world of family. And then, the sound of small footsteps, the gentle cooing of a child. Their son, Robert, was born. The days were gentle, slow, like the turning pages of an old book. Fleming, a man so deeply immersed in discovery, found himself drawn into the softer wonders of fatherhood. There was something delicate, something humbling about holding his child in his arms. Science had its mysteries, its endless questions, but here was a miracle beyond logic, beyond reason. His own flesh and blood, a new life beginning. Robert grew, watching his father with quiet admiration, He saw him leave for the lab in the early mornings, return with ink-stained fingers and a mind still lost in thought. But he also saw the tenderness in his father's eyes, the way he paused to ask about his day, the way he listened. Fleming was never a man of grand gestures, but in the little moments, helping with a school lesson, sharing stories from his own boyhood, simply sitting in silence together. His love was clear. Science was ever present in their home, but it was not forced upon Robert. Fleming never demanded that his son follow his path, never pressured him to pick up a microscope or study the same pages he once had. Instead, he nurtured curiosity, encouraged exploration, and in time, Robert chose his own way. Not in the laboratory, but in the practice of medicine itself. A doctor, a healer, carrying forward the legacy not of discovery, but of compassion, of care. The Flemings were not a family of grandeur. There were no lavish parties, no extravagant displays. Their life was quiet, simple, but in that simplicity there was deep meaning. A father who changed the world, a son who carried his work forward in a different way, a family bound not by fame, but by purpose. And so, even as the years passed, even as the world rushed forward, as scientific journals filled with new discoveries, the heart of Alexander Fleming's legacy was not only in petri dishes and papers. It was in his home, in his family, in a love that existed quietly between them. Time moves forward, as it always does, even for those who have changed the world. The years passed, and Alexander Fleming, once a young man, peering through microscopes with boundless curiosity, found himself in the later chapters of his life. By the 1940s and early 1950s, his name had become legendary, honored by kings, awarded the Nobel Prize, and forever remembered for his discovery of penicillin. And yet, despite all the recognition, all the praise, he remained the same humble scientist, always searching, always questioning, always looking for what more could be done. By the early 1950s, age had begun to slow him. The long hours in the lab grew shorter. The hands that once so carefully guided a petri dish now carried the weight of years. But his mind was still sharp, still filled with the same quiet wonder that had driven him since childhood. He continued his research, still devoted to the mysteries of medicine, though he knew the time he had left was growing shorter. On March 11, 1955, at the age of 73, Alexander Fleming passed away at his home in London. A heart attack, swift and final, took him from this world, leaving behind a legacy that would never fade. The man who had once watched mold destroy bacteria in a forgotten dish, the man whose discovery had saved millions of lives, took his last breath, his work complete. His wife, Dr. Maya Fleming, remained behind, his partner in life, his companion in science. She carried on his memory, continuing her own work in medicine, ensuring that his contributions to humanity would never be forgotten. In the years that followed, his name would only grow in honor. Hospitals, universities, and research centers bore his name, a testament to the impact he had made. And though time moved forward, though the world continued to change, his discovery remained. Every time a doctor prescribed penicillin, every time an infection was cured, every time a life was saved, Alexander Fleming's work lived on. Time moves forward, even for those who have changed the world. By the late 1940s, Alexander Fleming was no longer the young man peering through microscopes with boundless energy. His hair had turned silver, his hands slower, but his mind, his brilliant, curious mind, never faded. He had spent decades devoted to science, unraveling the mysteries of bacteria, watching as his discovery of penicillin saved countless lives. But even the greatest minds cannot outrun time. By 1955, Fleming's health began to wane. Long hours in laboratories, the endless pursuit of knowledge, had taken their toll. His body grew weary, his steps more measured. Yet, he never stopped working, never stopped thinking. In the quiet of his home, surrounded by the warmth of his family, he reflected on his journey. His wife, Dr. Amalia Fleming, stood by his side, her presence a comfort, a reminder that he had never walked this path alone. They had shared not just a marriage, but a passion for science and discovery. She had been his partner in research, his closest confidante, his unwavering support. On March 11, 1955, Alexander Fleming fell into a deep sleep from which he would not awaken. He passed away at the age of 73, his heart finally giving in to the passage of time. The man who had once peered into a petri dish and seen the future of medicine. The world mourned his passing, but his legacy was far from over. His discovery of penicillin continued to save lives, shaping modern medicine in ways even he could not have imagined. Hospitals across the world relied on the antibiotic he had found by chance but nurtured with determination. His name was spoken not just in scientific circles, but in homes, in conversations, in whispered prayers of gratitude from those whose lives had been spared. His wife, Amalia, continued their shared work, advocating for medical advancements and research. He carried his memory forward, ensuring that his contributions were never forgotten. Though they had no children, Alexander's legacy lived on in every life saved, in every doctor who prescribed penicillin, in every scientist inspired by his relentless curiosity. And so, his story did not end with his final breath. It echoed through time, carried forward by those who believed in the power of discovery, the magic of science, and the endless possibilities hidden within the smallest of things. As you drift into sleep, let his story remind you that even the smallest discoveries can change the course of history, that even the quietest moments of curiosity can lead to something extraordinary. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his peace fill your heart. And may you rest knowing that you are loved, watched over, and guided always. But let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream. Amos 5:24. Just as a single drop of water can set a river in motion, one discovery, one act of curiosity, can change the course of history. Fleming's work was more than science. It was a gift that flowed through generations, bringing healing and hope. May you rest knowing that your own life, in ways big or small, carries the power to bless others. Good night, my friend. Sleep well.